Cool. So I guess we may as well just get started. So welcome everyone. This is going to be my first tier list for the weapons in Back 4 Blood. This was a sub goal for Twitch, which we did reach. So thank you very much everyone that made this happen. But it is exactly what you imagine this is going to be. I'm going to be rating every single weapon in the game. I've already set it up, so it's going to be from S+ down to C. Unlike my cleaner tier list, where I went into that like very transparent, I was going to be like, look, this isn't going to take a long time because no cleaners are bad. I'm basically just going to be ranking them based on, you know, how versatile they are and what works for Nightmare and whatever's going on. This is going to be different. There are going to be a lot of, maybe not a lot, but a number of weapons that are just straight up not very good in my opinion, and some weapons that are just next level strong and will work basically anywhere. So the way I'm going to be rating these weapons are on their individual strengths, but also how many builds they work with that are builds that I think work really well on Nightmare. Once again, just like the cleaner tier list, this is going to be a Nightmare tier list, so you know, if I was doing this for veteran or like recruit, basically every weapon would be in S and above because you can basically use whatever gun you want on those difficulties near enough. But for Nightmare, you do have to keep more of a conscious thought on what weapons you're using, and depending on the builds you're going for, some weapons are good and some weapons aren't. So enough of the intro. I think we may as well make a start. So I am going to do them like a class of weapon at a time and go from there in terms of, you know, where I'm going to put them. So I'm going to do, let's do the assault rifles first. So absolutely, like, you know, starting off, I'm going to be putting the AK in A tier. This is going to be our kind of like middle point for this list. This is going to be like, you know, solid mid tier, I would say, are A tier weapons, because I think, you know, these are weapons that you're going to find yourself being able to use, but you're going to find yourself upgrading from a fair few times in the run. And the AK, I think, is kind of the perfect example of that. It has respectable damage output. It has, you know, a generous reload time. And decent range to it. This is like your bog standard assault rifle. So it's got, you know, decent damage, decent fire rate. It's not the most ammo hungry, but it has, you know, quite a short magazine size. It's definitely middle of the pack when it comes to all of the above. So this is like the perfect middle point assault rifle in the game, in my opinion. You know, you're not going to be unhappy to see it, but you're certainly not going to find yourself staying on it for the entire, you know, for the entire run, unless you get yourself some juicy attachments, because again, attachments can make near enough any gun worthwhile. But the AK is one of those guns where its downsides can be mitigated if you find the right attachments, right? Like extended mag, it works well with bullet stumble, and it's, you know, decent range is complemented by scope. So it's a nice middle of the ground weapon. What is next here out of the ARs? Right, M16. I'll be honest, I'm going to put the M16 in the same kind of rung. I think when it comes to a burst rifle, again, like, it is very similar. It is very similar to the AK in the sense that, you know, it's okay damage. It's, you know, I would say a bit better than average, but it's got very small magazine size. It is not great at, you know, point blank range. It is one of those kind of like ranch rifle style weapons that you're going to want to be using from a longer range, and it is going to severely suffer up close. But as far as ARs go, it does hurt a lot, has good weak spot damage to it. And again, if you can find like an extended mag or something like that to mitigate the fact that it reloads so often, and if you've got, like, you know, maybe you've got a lot of reload speed in your deck, or you've got a fast mag, then it's not as bad for that. But generally speaking, this is where I'm going to be putting the M16. Followed by, what's our next AR? I'll do LMGs at the same time. So, M249, I am going to put this, I'll be honest, I'm going to be putting it in S+. For one particular reason. At the moment, as of this tier list being made, you know, November 2021, the only weakness this gun has is completely avoidable by the drop and pick up reload trick. This weapon is absurd. It has really good damage output for what it is. You know, it might seem lower bullet for bullet, but trust me, with the amount of damage you can shell out, you know, ammo is easy to deal with. You know, there are a lot of decent cards that you can take. With a certain amount of cards, like the M249, if you're really going into LMGs, this weapon like is an S plus weapon 1000%. It is crazy damage. It is crazy crowd control and common clear. And it is one of those weapons that if you're building into it becomes just absolutely ridiculous. If you're not building into LMGs, I would honestly put it into like maybe A tier, because again, you know, unless you're really building to what makes it good, it's not going to be as powerful at all. But you could say that about many of the weapons in the game. And the LMG deck is one of my personal most used nightmare decks, and it is one of the most consistent in terms of DPS, crowd control, solo survivability. Like, it is so hard for you to get overwhelmed if you're running this. You know, there are so many, any holdout mission or holdout objective, the M249 with the LMG deck is just absurd. Because if you're not reloading it normally and you are good at the dropping and pickup trick, the weapon just explodes beyond its normal potential. If we see that trick nerfed, I would probably move this gun down, but as it currently stands, this weapon is ludicrous. What next? M4 carbine. This weapon is trash. This weapon is not good at all. It has some of the lowest power in the game. It feels like it is not ammo efficient. It is only good if you find yourself with, you know, early weak spot damage and you can clear out commons. But even then, I would rather any single AR in the game instead of the M4. This is easily the worst AR in the game. I would say it's one of the worst weapons overall. It just doesn't do enough damage. Like straight up, it does not do enough damage. That is its number one problem, and it is a huge problem. Like, you just don't... Because the problem with weapons that don't do a lot of damage in this game is they are not ammo efficient. And ammo efficiency is one of the things that is going to keep weapons up in the higher tiers in this game. As we go through this tier list, you'll see me using that as a point a lot, and the M4 is the exact opposite. It has no damage, it just doesn't hurt enough. You go through ammo like nothing, and literally any other AR in the game should be something you're prioritizing over the M4. I do not like this weapon at all. Now, what's next? Ranch rifle. Hello. We've got what I think could be the best weapon in the game. The ranch rifle is everything you need to be good as a weapon in this game. The ranch rifle does. It's got high base damage. It is good at dealing with specials. It's good at dealing with commons. It's got a respectable reload time. It's got good range. And because of that, it is one of the most ammo efficient guns in the game. You have like the AR is a you know, class of weapon that has a lot of base ammo, because, you know, look at what ARs are in the game, right? LMGs, you've got fully automatics. So the balance of ammo is generally given for automatics in mind. Ranch rifle, semi-automatic. You're going to find yourself being... Like, if you run out of ammo using the ranch rifle, you're probably doing something wrong. And that is so good to have. And not only that, because of its base power, its range, and its weak spot damage that it does overall, because of that, if you're running an AR or damage build in general, this weapon is going to explode. It's practically a mini sniper rifle at that point with a tremendous amount of ammo. And on the flip side, if you're not running damage, at all, the ranch rifle's base numbers are so good, it is absolutely one of those weapons you should be picking up. Like, if you're running full dock, if you're running any deck that doesn't have any damage in it, the ranch rifle is a must-have weapon, or at least something that you'll consider picking up, because it's good no matter what. No matter the build, no matter the cleaner, this gun is crazy good. Two-shot body shot for all commons. If you've got any form of damage, it becomes a one-shot body shot. Like, it's great. It's great. Use that weapon. Get good with that weapon. You'll see what I mean. And there's only, I think there's only one... No, there's only 2 ARs left, or AR category weapons. You've got the Scar. So the Scar... I'm going to put the Scar... Okay. So, personally... I'm going to put the Scar just above, above the other ARs in A tier. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge believer in the ARs in this game. I think they can be very good, but they need a bit more builds to make work. Like if you're running ARs, you need a bit more base damage or weak spot damage cards to really see them like do their job, because they're very like middle of the pack across the board, right? They're like medium mobility, I would say, you know, above average DPS, especially compared to, you know, like SMGs, for example. Like, they do their job well, but they're not, like, the best in the game, unless you're looking at, like, Ranch Rifle. The Scar is by far the highest, you are right, it's by far the highest DPS of the ARs. Because of that, I think I do want to put it in S. Because it's either right at the top of A, or it is basically going to be up here. I'd almost make an A+, but if I make an A+, we will see. We'll see if an A+ is necessary. I don't think it is. I think, you know what? We'll do it. Because I don't use ARs too much myself, because I'm not a huge believer in them. I'm much more of like an LMG or Ranch Rifle kind of believer, even though it is an AR, you know what I'm saying. Everyone that I know that plays ARs swears by the Scar. So I see it working a lot. So I think I'm going to throw it in S. I do think it needs to be up here, because it is by far the best of the standard ARs as we know them. You know, if you're talking about automatics. So yeah, I'm going to put it up here, just because I think it is a common style of weapon. You're going to find it a lot, and it does do very respectable damage. So yeah, I'm going to put this up here for sure. And I think that's it. Okay, RPK. RPK is going to be joining the Scar in S. The RPK is basically, I would say it's like, if you can find an M249, unless by the time you find one, you've got like an RPK with hella attachments on it, you should always swap. I think the RPK is really good, because I think LMGs in general are busted right now. Like, if you are good at the drop, pick up, reload trick, the DPS you get, and just all of the above, crowd control, range, you know, survivability, all of that amazing. The only downside is obviously, you know, slow mobility when you're holding onto it, but you can just like swap to a secondary and move fast, like have a handgun or a Tech 9, and then just, if you need to move, swap to that and then use that to reposition instead. I think these are incredible weapons. I really do. If you don't believe in LMGs, I'm telling you, get good at the drop reload trick. You will immediately see how good these can be. Like, I cannot stress it enough just how good the RPK and the M249 are. But I think the M249 is definitely noticeably better than the RPK, so I'm putting this here. Again, you know, normally if a gun needs a specific deck to be, you know, to make work, I wouldn't put it up here. But the LMG deck is so strong on Nightmare that I cannot suggest this enough, for sure. And that's going to be it for the ARs. So moving on next, I think we're going to do... I'll tell you what, let's do the sniper rifles next, because that's not a bad go-to place. So, what's the next one we have here? Okay, the M1A. I'll be honest, I'm going to put the M1A in A tier. I think it is definitely by far the worst sniper rifle. Easily the worst sniper rifle in the game. It's not a bad weapon, don't get me wrong. It is usable, but it is very much like the middle point sniper rifle. If you want to use snipers, but you don't want to be so, like, you know, slower paced, you want, like, you know, higher damage than an AR, but not quite the slow mobility of, or not, maybe not even slow mobility, but the slower damage style of the bolt actions, this is what you use. But even then, I mean, the main reason I'm putting this in A is because the other snipers are considerably better, and they are going to be in S and above for sure. I think it's not a bad weapon, but when it comes to snipers, it's not very ammo efficient. Obviously, being that middle ground, like, you know, faster fire rate, you're going to be using it as much more of like a, you know, mid-range, almost like a Ranch Rifle plus, right? But it doesn't have the bullets to sustain the same amount of playstyle, and obviously it has sniper rifle mobility, which isn't bad, but it's not as much as you would have from like an AR in general. So the M1A for me is the kind of sniper, if you're running a sniper deck and you haven't found a Phoenix or a Barrett, that's when you're going to use an M1. And for that reason, it's very usable and it can be a solid source of damage, but it is the kind of sniper rifle that you will be swapping immediately the moment you find a Phoenix or Barrett, because they are insane. Insane weapons. The Phoenix, in fact, I'm putting it up here as well. Like, these aren't going to be ordered. They're just going to be, you know, the tiers are what they are. But the Phoenix, hands down, one of the best weapons in the game, in my opinion. This weapon is crazy good. The stagger power to stun lock specials, even if you get like you can get a really small bullet stumble, like, attachments for it, and that by itself, like, no specials get to play the game. You know, like, as long as you're hitting weak spots, like, you do need to be hitting weak spots with the Phoenix. That's number one. If you're running this sniper rifle, you need to be able to hit those weak spots 100%. Otherwise, you're wasting the weapon's potential. But if you are a good shot, this is crazy. It is so ammo efficient. It is, you know, because of its firing speed. Like, this is the middle point between the M1 and the Barrett. And because of that, it's crazy. Because you can crowd control quite well with it. You know, you're going to be running reload speed generally, and reload speed makes it fire faster as well. It kills bosses, it kills specials, it kills common, it's good on ammo. Like, this weapon is crazy good. And you can run it so many different ways. And it's another one of those guns that, again, if you've got like a medic that's running almost no damage cards or no damage cards, you can take the Phoenix, and you're going to be, again, killing specials, you're going to be stumbling things, you're going to be able to clear commons from a distance, and you're going to be able to contribute to boss fights. Like, this weapon is crazy good and should be used for sure by just about any kind of cleaner, any kind of class. And especially if you're running damage and running snipers, like, this is a must-have weapon. It is so good. And then the Barrett. Where is the Barrett? So the Barrett... Wait, is the Barrett not here? Oh, it's literally right in front of you. I'm just not seeing it. So the Barrett... Okay. I'm going to put the Barrett in S still, because I do genuinely believe this is that good of a weapon, for sure. However, it is going to be like on the lower end of S+, because the Barrett is not as versatile and does need the right kind of deck to work, but much like the M249, if you find yourself with that deck, like, the quality of life of a party having a good Barrett user is next level. Like, whereas, like, the Phoenix is that middle point where it can kind of crowd control, it can definitely kill specials, and it does a good job chunking bosses, the Barrett is not going to crowd control at all. You're not going to be killing a lot of commons with this. If you get mobbed, you are going to need a secondary to, you know, deal with that. However, you are all but one-shotting most specials in the game. You are annihilating bosses. Like, if you've got a good sniper weak spot build on the go with the Barrett, and again, if you've got bullet stumble, if you've just got more base damage, weak spot damage, this weapon, it deletes problematic enemies. And on Nightmare, dealing with specials, especially right now, you know, again, you know, November 2021, we're currently bugged where specials are spawning way more than they should, way more frequently. So you need special killing ability. Look no further than the Barrett for that. The Barrett, it annihilates problematic specials. Tall boys just get annihilated. You are stumbling all of the, you know, the Reekers, the Wretches, Exploders. Like, you're stumbling anything that would normally wipe the party if they get close. You're one-shotting Stingers. You are one-shotting Snitches. And you're just destroying bosses. Like, if you have a good Barrett user, the whole game just gets so much simpler because it's so good being able to delete specials when they are currently as problematic as they are. And I imagine they always will be on Nightmare. So, very, very good weapon, provided you've got someone who's good with it. But if they are, definitely super strong. That's it for the snipers. Now, let's go to the shotguns next. So, the shotguns. The 870... Again, this is your kind of middle point shotgun, in my opinion. I think shotguns in general are maybe some of the strongest weapons in the game. I think they are like snipers where there isn't really a bad shotgun. Actually, no. There is a bad shotgun, and I'll get to it in a bit. But the 870, I think, is your kind of middle point shotgun. Which is, again, it's decent on ammo. It's got a longer reload, but it has good damage. It's like the M1A of shotguns, where if you're running a shotgun build, it is usable. And again, you know, shotguns are a go-to source of damage for people that don't run a lot of damage cards because they have the base numbers to make up for it. And the 870 isn't a bad weapon to use for that, but it is something you'll be upgrading from the second you find one, right? Because it is the worst of that kind of shotgun, but it's not a bad gun by itself. I think that is definitely worth using, but it's definitely going to be on the lower end of shotguns. But shotguns are so good that it's still going to be usable for sure. The AA-12 is, in my opinion, the bad shotgun. I think I'm putting it in B and not C because I don't think it's useless. Like, C tier weapons are weapons that you should be upgrading from immediately, and you should have it as little as possible. For me, the reason that AA12 isn't that is because it does have a niche use. So the reason I don't rate the AA12 at all, and I do not like the AA12 at all as a gun, it is maybe the most wasteful gun in the game when it comes to ammo, with a weapon type where you don't have a lot of ammo. Like, to make the AA12 not just ruin your ammo, you need to take cards for it. And that goes against it, because the ammo cards, they cut down on stamina, they cut down on utility, and that's actually what the AA12 is good for, because it's got high mobility. Like, your movement speed with the AA12 is very good. Like, for speed running, the AA12 is fine, because it annihilates doors. It shoots, objectives really quickly, and it has a high base mobility, so you can run fast with it. But in general Nightmare play, it is only going to do damage if you're basically at touching distance. Like, and that's a distance you do not want to be at on Nightmare. Because don't get me wrong, the AA12 can destroy mutations and destroy things at touching distance. And that is dangerous. The AA12 is, in my opinion, best used as a backup. If you're running like double primaries and you want your secondary weapon to be something that is just like, I'm being mobbed, I need to swap to it and just clear out. Under that one circumstance, the AA12 is good for that. Because you're effectively using it as a sidearm, where it's like used in those clutch moments, and the AA12 can be a clutch weapon. However, it is not a primary you should be using. Until I am convinced otherwise and I see it working in other circumstances, I will not rate the AA12 at all. I do not like it as a gun. I think it is far too niche, and every other shotgun, especially as a primary source of damage, is going to massively outshine it. And again, remember, we're talking Nightmare. When Nightmare, enemies have more health. You fight a ferocious or a monstrous tall boy, the AA12 isn't going to do anything unless you are point blank. And if you're point blank, they're going to kill you first most of the time. So not a weapon that I enjoy at all, or I think is very strong. However, on the flip side, TAC-14, boom! TAC-14 is super good. I think this is easily the best shotgun in the game. I think, again, it's the kind of it's the kind of weapon that you can use this with no damage cards and still shred. It's got a good weak spot damage. It's got good base damage. It's got good bullet stumble. It's low on the shots, but it doesn't take long to reload. You could run it with power swap and be one of the highest damage characters in the game. You can run it with just base damage, weak spot damage. You can use it with the ADS builds and snipe with it if you want. You can run it with reload speed, and you're just like fire, get an extended mag on it, and it just becomes even crazier. Like, there are so many situations where the TAC-14 is just an amazing source of damage. And again, shotguns don't have a lot of ammo, and when you're killing things as quickly as the TAC-14 does, you don't need more ammo, because it is just so good. Easily, in my opinion, the best shotgun. Works with any shotgun or damage build, works with power swap like an absolute dream, works with low damage builds because it has the base numbers, and it's good on ammo. It ticks all the boxes. Absolutely a weapon you should be considering if you're a shotgun enthusiast. Followed by... Okay, there's 2 shotguns left. I know the Belgian is technically a sidearm, but I'm going to put it in as a shotgun. In fact, no, I'm not. I'm going to keep that with the sidearms. I'll keep it consistent. Super 90. S tier weapon for me. I think it is definitely better than the 870 for most builds. The only time I think the 870 is better than the Super 90 is if you're running for power swap. Because power swap is about doing so much damage, you're actually not just like... At least power swap shotguns, you're not constantly firing and absolutely just, gunning through ammo. And the 870 and Super 90, they actually do quite similar damage amounts, like shot for shot. But the Super 90's fire rate really helps it shine as a damage source or as a secondary, damage source because of its fire rate. And if you've got even a bit of reload speed, you're going to be firing quite often, and it's still going to work out. I think in most situations, it's better than the 870, unless you're going for power swap and you want to conserve ammo. But across the board, Super 90, I really believe in it as a gun. I think that the Super 90 is very, very solid as a shotgun. And shotguns overall, they're just really good. Some of the best weapons in the game, easily, in my opinion. But that's looking good for me. That's looking good for me so far. We might make a few adjustments when we get nearer the end, but we'll get there. Right, so what's next? All right, let's do melee weapons next. Let's do melee. So, full disclaimer, I have used melee less than almost any form of damage in this game. I have used a decent amount of it, but it is by far where I'm the least experienced. So the melee placements are going to be the most probably up for debate, especially as melee is a lot different in this patch, but I've played with a lot of melee users. I've heard a lot of melee users talking about what they think, and I've got my own opinions. So, take that with a pinch of salt. Bash isn't a weapon. I'm not even gonna bother placing that because that's not a weapon. The bat. I am gonna put the bat on post-patch. I'm gonna put it in A. In this patch of the game, I'm not a huge believer in the bat. I don't think it's very good at all. I might bump it up. It depends on where I put the other ones, really, but the bat did get heavily nerfed, but it was an incredible weapon before. I would say it's probably the most nerfed melee weapon, because this was super strong for the style. In fact, actually, for that reason, for now, I'm going to still put it in S, because this weapon was stupid good before. Because fundamentally, when I think melee nightmare, I think damage resistance, I think health regeneration, and basically just being that frontline player. And for that, the bat is still good. The bat is still good at that playstyle, and that is still the most effective melee playstyle on Nightmare. It cleaves, which is a massive plus. Being able to take out a group, just holding an angle. If you're playing that melee style where, you're holding objectives by, holding a doorway, you're sitting on barbed wire, and you're just taking them out as they get to you, the bat is really good at that because it has that cleaving effect. It's good at getting things away from you. You can deal with, if you've got the common types that you can't hit them in the head or you'll kill yourself, the bat is good at that because it has that stumble, it has that cleave. It has the ability to not automatically get headshots like the axe or, the hatchet does. So it's still going to be, I think, the most reliable melee weapon. And for that same reason, I'm also putting the machete up here. I think bat and machete is more of a case of preference based on what you want. The machete is going to be less on the stumble, higher on the damage. So if you want, the crowd control of the bat, but more ability to kill specials, you go for the machete. If you want the crowd control and more of a stumble approach, you go for the bat. That's generally for the same reasons they're up here. And it's a case of preference as to whether you want to kill specials or whether you want to be more of a, frontline crowd control kind of deal. The hatchet, I think this weapon sucks. I am not a believer in the hatchet at all. I think this weapon is trash on Nightmare. I don't see why you would ever use it. It just isn't worth it. Yes, it has the speed and it's got the mobility, but everything the hatchet is good at isn't what you do melee on Nightmare for. It has no range. It has decent damage, sure, but you're not a source of damage on Nightmare with melee. You are a aggro frontline tank. You're like a support player almost. And the hatchet is the worst at that. And what the hatchet is good at, I don't rate on Nightmare at all. I think this is easily the worst melee weapon in the game. Combat knife, that's a card. That's not a weapon, that's a card. If I do a card tier list, I'll talk about combat knife because that's not a weapon, that's a card. Fire axe, I love it. It's my favorite melee weapon, but I'm putting it here. I think the axe is, again, it's good at all of the above with general stuff. It's, it's decent at dealing with commons. It's decent for that kind of crowd control. But the main thing is the range. It's a much safer melee weapon to use because it's a long range melee weapon. It suffers if you have mutations, if you've got corruption cards like exploding heads, or anything I guess mainly the exploding heads, but anything that you want to not get a headshot, the axe is trash for because you have to get headshot kills with it basically no matter what. But this is good at killing most specials. By itself, the fire axe is a decent special killer. Post-patch, it's a bit worse with just how melee got nerfed in general. But if you're running heavy hitter, the fire axe becomes specials don't get to play. Even if you're not a source of damage, run heavy hitter, and the fire axe just means that tall boys don't get to be a problem. You're going to be pretty much killing anything that isn't an exploder or that kind of category of mutation because obviously you don't melee those anyway. and it's okay at boss damage. So I think it's all right. Yeah, and one of the biggest downsides to the axe is it's like low mobility. But again, mobility isn't a bonus for melee on Nightmare anyway. You are going to be that slower frontline kind of defender that's just generating temp health and just making things a bit easier for the team. And the fire axe is okay at that. And that's going to be it for melee. So we have two types of weapons left. We have sidearms and SMGs. We'll do sidearms last. So SMGs. I am going to put the MP5. As much as I hate to do it, it's going to go down here. I think the MP5 is, as far as SMGs go, it's one of the weaker ones. And SMGs in general are very good. So it's a bad version of a, maybe not even bad by itself. It's a weak version of a strong class of weapon. But I don't think it's unusable. Like, these weapons are ones that you should basically never use under any circumstances. I feel like the MP5, like the AA-12, it's okay in power swap because it dumps its mag so fast, and it can do respectable damage with power swap, but even then it's outclassed by every other SMG in that right, basically. It's a very low source of solo damage, and the kind of SMG that you're only going to use if you find yourself with a lot of attachments. And I don't know how often you'll find yourself in that situation on Nightmare. Uzi, to be honest, Uzi I actually think is the same kind of effect. I think Uzi is just, it just doesn't do the damage. Like, the biggest problem with the weaker SMGs is they don't have ammo efficiency, and it's a very common form of ammo. Like, a lot of people run handguns because handguns are really ammo efficient. They're good sidearms. A lot of people run handguns, and SMGs are very common for, like, you know, SMG builds, whether it's like, you know, the Warzone SMG style power swap, whether it's quick switch, or just solo SMGs. I don't rate these two weapons very well. Like, again, they can work very situationally, but I just don't think you're going to be sticking with them. You know, you're going to find yourself a UMP or a Vector, and you're just going to directly upgrade most of the time. Again, you know, with certain attachments, they're not useless. And, you know, again, with power swap, these can be good. But, again, in those categories, they are just outshone big time by the UMP, which I think, very good weapon. I am a big fan of the UMP. I think it's almost like a mini assault rifle, where, again, it has the lower mobility, but it does have a lot of damage for an SMG. It's a very ammo efficient and high damage version of an ammo type that goes through bullets like nothing. Get yourself a UMP with any good damage build, and it will work. If you're not running damage and you end up with SMGs because of just the way ammo is distributed among the party, the UMP is going to be your best bet for still being able to contribute some damage and not run out of bullets straight away. The problem with SMGs as a class is they need very specific builds to work. Otherwise, they are just going to be a drain on ammo and not do a lot. They are builds that can be somewhat common, but if you're not building into them, they really aren't going to be doing the noticeable damage. Like, these are the damage and mobility class. And mobility, whilst being important on Nightmare, mobility with no damage in most parties is going to be a problem. Which is where the UMP really shines, in my opinion. With that in mind, though, the Vector, I'm actually going to put the Vector up here with the UMP, because I think SMGs as a class are quite polarizing, where the UMP is the most versatile SMG. The MP5 and the Uzi are kind of just mobility tools that you will look to upgrade from as soon as possible. The Vector, with certain builds, deletes. Like, this weapon annihilates if you've got power swap, if you've got fast reload speed, if you've got a lot of base damage. The main problem with the Vector is it's ammo inefficient as hell. Like, this thing dumps bullets faster than almost any gun in the game. But the SMGs, you know, the SMG ammo you find a lot of. So if you are being ammo inefficient, you know, you can kind of mitigate that if you're building into it. It's still a problem, but you do so much damage so quickly, it ends up not feeling as bad, if that makes sense. So if you're going for like SMG power swap, this is insane. Like actually insane. If you have like a Glock auto or a Tech 9 secondary with a Vector primary, that is some of the highest damage you can do realistically. And that alone would make the Vector an S tier gun by itself. But overall, I think, you know, if you're building into SMGs, the Vector is one of the best options you can get for sure, next to the UMP. And if you're not building it into SMGs and you just want some good damage, the UMP is good in general. So these are definitely the two best in my opinion, and these are going to be your two worst. And that brings us on to sidearms, where there's actually quite a lot of them. 357, unfortunately, I'm putting down here. I think the 357, I love the weapon, but it's just not... Okay, very slow fire rate, very slow reload animation, respectable base damage that scales really well with attachments, and incredibly ammo efficient. So I actually would put the 357 as like the higher of B, but it's still not a great gun. It's still not going to be doing too much, and compared to almost any other sidearm, like sidearms in general are another category that I find quite polarizing, where some of them just aren't very strong, while some of them are absurd, like actually absurd. 357 though, I feel like is definitely on the lower end of things. Like, don't get me wrong, I love this gun, but it just doesn't feel very good to use. It's good on ammo efficiency because it does run on AR, and it doesn't go through bullets quickly, so you're probably going to find yourself with a lot to, you know, to spare. But it's just not amazing compared to a lot of the other sidearms. Like, its fire rate is slow, it has okay damage, don't get me wrong, and like I said, with certain attachments it can really do well. But you could say the same about most of these sidearms, and they would be better as a base anyway. Its best strength by far is ammo efficiency and... you know, decent damage output, but it's definitely let down by a lot of other downsides. Desert Eagle, I'm actually going to put above it. I think the Desert Eagle is, again, like, it's good power for what it is. It's not amazing by itself, but with, you know, with attachments, it can really shine. But the best thing about a Desert Eagle is it's a good sidearm for most parties if you've got, like, one sniper user, and that's it. Because if you've got someone using sniper ammo, again, on Nightmare, if you've got someone using sniper ammo, they are typically going to be the only person using sniper ammo. You can get away with having one other sniper gun, ammo-wise, in the party, and you're not going to ruin it for the sniper user, because you're going to find more ammo than one person can use. The Desert Eagle, very good for that, as being a second source of sniper ammo that you're not going to run out of, because you're not going to go through that much as a party. And for the damage that it does, and the fire rate, like, it's a respectable weapon. It's outshined by a few others, but if you just want a decent sidearm to punch out some strong damage and not be a drain on ammo, and with, you know, with a respectable reload speed, like, the Desert Eagle is really good for that. I think it's a reliable gun. I'm putting it in the middle because, again, I don't think it's particularly amazing, but it's definitely not bad. So it's going to be going in this kind of like middle pack area, in my opinion. The Glock Auto, I'm going to put up here as well. I'm going to put it in A as well, for one reason. It is one of the best weapons in the game for doing power swap. It is one of the best weapons for constant DPS. And if you're running ammo stash, it is non-stop. It is non-stop damage. It's got a really quick reload speed. It's got a really quick time to get through its magazine. But its base damage isn't amazing. Like, it can add up really quickly, don't get me wrong, but you do need certain builds to make the Glock Auto work well. Like, with power swap, it's absurd. With ammo stash, it's crazy. With reload speed, it's wild. But if you're not running a certain, you know, handful of cards that will benefit it, it is going to be not a huge amount of damage and a big drain on your ammo. So with certain cards, it's really good. And without them, it's not something that you should kind of go with. It's also one of the harder weapons to use in general because you can't use it with aiming down the sight. If you aim down the sight with a Glock Auto, you're not going to see anything. It is a hip-fire weapon through and through. Because even though you can ADS with it, the second you start firing it, you're just going to not see what's going on. It is really, like, clunky to use in that respect. Unless you've got a suppressor. If you can find a suppressor, that definitely helps it. But again, you know, it needs a lot of help to really shine. And when it shines, don't get me wrong. But when it hasn't got that support, it is a very forgettable weapon. On the flip side, the Glock 23, I mean, it's just a decent sidearm. Like, I'm not going to be putting it too high because, you know, overall, a sidearm is a sidearm, and there are definitely some other stronger ones that I'll eventually talk about. I think this is basically like, it's a decent source of damage. This is like your quintessential sidearm, is the Glock 23. Like, it has very forgettable damage, but it's good at crowd control. It's got a nice chunky magazine. It's very ammo efficient. It's just, it is a sidearm through and through. It is just a pistol, you know, like, it is very unimpressive, but it's not terrible. It is going to be your complete and utter secondary source of damage. But for that, it's going to get the job done, and it's a very middle of the ground, not bad weapon. Not great, but definitely not bad. M19, however, I love this gun. I think it is far and away the best handgun in the game. I think its base damage, really good for a pistol. Really, really good. A lot of weak spot damage to be done as well. The fire rate combined with the damage makes it, I would say, maybe the most ammo efficient handgun in the game. Like, if you've got an M19, you're not going to run out of bullets. You are not going to find yourself, because it runs on SMG ammo and it does the damage it does for the fire rate it has, and again, decent reload speed too. It's so good at all of the good stuff a weapon needs to be useful for, and it has so much ammo in reserve. You know, this is like my most used handgun by far. I have builds where I run handguns as a primary source of damage, and the M19 is like the weapon I look for, because it is, I think, maybe the most underrated gun in the game, the M19. It does so much damage. It's a great starting weapon. Again, you can run this with no damage cards and be good at a bit of crowd control, somewhat special damage, but even if you're running a lot of damage, you're going to find the M19 doing a lot of work by itself. And the fact that, you know, most people that run out of bullets will run out of bullets on their sidearm. Doesn't happen with the M19. Absolutely does not happen. Good mobility, good swap speed. It's just good at everything. And as a sidearm, like, I could have that as a sidearm on almost any build with any character and feel very, very safe because of it. Really good. And surprisingly accurate from hipfire too. It's just really good. Really, really, really good weapon. On the flip side, however, both Berettas, the M9 and the M9 Burst, in fact, M9 I'm going to put down here. M9 Burst I'm putting in C. I do not think the M9s are good at all. Like, they are by far the worst handguns. Like, the M9 is okay for, like, quick crowd control, because it does fire very quickly, it reloads very quickly. But you need some form of damage card to actually make it even, like, one-shot commons. like if you don't have any forms of damage card, and I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that I'm not. I'm fairly sure that without any damage cards, the M9 doesn't even one-shot headshot commons. It is so low on damage that it is hard to excuse using, even as a sidearm. Because a sidearm needs to exist for you to... Your primary is either out of ammo or you got to reload. You need to swap to this weapon and deal with what's in front of you. Or you're going to use it while running around to conserve ammo on your primary so you can, you know, mop up what's around. Whether that's commons, whether it's like roaming specials. The Berettas, both of them, they're bad at all of that. They're not very good at crowd control. They're kinda ammo efficient if you can get some damage cards so they actually can deal with commons, but, you know, that's something that you have to build into to even rely on your sidearm. They still have low damage. They are miserable at dealing with specials. And the Burst isn't that much better. Just two weapons that I do not like at all. I think these are far and away the worst handguns in the game. The Beretta M9, a little bit better than the Burst, just because, you know, you have the choice to use it as a bog standard sidearm if you have like a bit of weak spot damage to one-shot commons, or a bit of base damage to maybe pump it up a little bit. But they go through ammo way too quick. They don't have the damage, and you have to really mitigate what sucks about them. And for that reason, I don't like them very much at all. Tech 9. I think this weapon is very good. I think the Tech 9 is incredible. I think it has statistically lower damage than the Glock 23, but it is much better on ammo. It's got a decent reload. Like, this is maybe the most comfortable sidearm in the game for most players. It has good attachments, access to good attachments. It synergizes well with like all the SMG cards the Tech-9 will get. And that's one thing I have to point out. Pistols have like 3 cards that will apply to them. You've got dropping ammo on pistol kill. You've got what's it called? Like there's the 30% ammo and 10% damage card. The name of it escapes me at the moment. That does SMGs and pistols. And that's kind of it. It really doesn't like, pistols are hard to build into. But there's a lot of SMG cards, and the SMG cards will apply to the Tech-9 because it's an SMG in the game's eyes. So if you are running an SMG build, Tech-9 is the sidearm you want. If you're running anything that helps SMGs, you want a Tech-9 because it's going to get all those bonuses. If you're running power swap, Tech-9. If you're running SMGs for base damage, Tech-9 with ammo stash. So you've got an infinite ammo version, at your disposal. And even if you're not running towards it, this is very good at crowd control. It's got a very fast base reload time. It is the quintessential sidearm for most people if they can find themselves having it. And if you're building SMGs, it becomes a crazy source of damage. Absolutely, absolutely crazy. Mag Carrier, that's the one. I knew it was Mag something, but I couldn't remember the name of it. But yeah, very, very good weapon with that in mind. For much of the same reasons, the Belgian I am also putting into S tier. I think the Belgian... So, it is very lopsided. If you don't have anything that builds damage, the Belgian's not great. If you haven't got any reload speed, the Belgian's not great. However, the Belgian is the missing piece to so many strong sources of damage. Power swap, it's crazy. Infinite secondary, it's crazy. Got a lot of reload speed, it's wild. Got a lot of hip fire accuracy, get the Belgian. Weak spot damage, get the Belgian. Like, this weapon... And I've even got, like, there's the deck on the channel you can see of me using the Belgian by itself as a solo source of damage on Nightmare, and it works. This weapon is so versatile with so many builds that if you're not building into anything, maybe it's not going to seem that great. But you get any of those very common and very popular forms of decks and damage, the Belgian just becomes this crazy source of damage. The best secondary for power swap, the best secondary for... fast reload and infinite ammo, like, so good. And if you're running shotguns as a deck type, have the Belgian. You will absolutely not regret it, for sure. And then, yeah, these 3 don't really count as weapons. So, looking at this, chat, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm actually feeling pretty good about this. This did take a little bit of time. There's a lot of weapons to cover, and obviously this is my first weapon tier list of the game, so, do take it with a pinch of salt. I'm not saying this is definitively the weapon tier list. This is more my opinion. But I really do think this is quite... This is quite reflective of my view on the weapons in the game. I'm looking into it a bit more, and... yeah. This is about how I'm feeling, honestly. I'm not seeing anything that's, like, sticking out. Like, based on the weapons that I've used and the amount that I have played and the things that I have seen, this is feeling pretty good. I think just for my own, like, seeing it all neat and tidy, I'm going to put the weapons next to each other in the same weapon type. So we'll do... Okay, we've got... ARs, shotgun, melee, SMG, sidearms. Actually, I think it's like that already. I will put these on the side. And then, yeah. Okay, that looks neater to me. That looks more neat and tidy. But yeah, so obviously, please do have your own opinions. Let me know what you think. Of course, again, just to finally reiterate, this is a Nightmare tier list for weapons, in my opinion. Other difficulties, it is what it is. It's probably be completely different. But I think this is really good. LMGs and AR seem a bit screwed, but everything else is good. I'm telling you, man. Run the LMG deck that I use all the time, and I'm sure you would agree. Like, these weapons with the LMG decks are borderline broken, I think. Anyway, for the sake of YouTube, this is where I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you hanging out and spending your time watching this with me. Of course, please do let me know what you think. This is going to be the first of numerous tier lists as the game gets patches and changes, but I think for a starter tier list, I've played a ton of Nightmare. I've beaten Nightmare a bunch of times already on all the acts. I stream this game all the time doing Nightmare, so this is what I think. This is 100% my opinion, but this is definitely where I see the weapons currently. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.